Hello guys, this is going to be a new series and it's going to be centered around the game of Shogi. Shogi is also known as the General's Game. It is a two-player strategy board game, probably the most popular native variant of chess in Japan. However, it is not the same as chess, apart from a few similarities that we will discuss later. The Japanese city, Tendo, is known for producing shogi pieces since the Edo period. This is a very traditional and local craft in that area. The Ningen Shogi, or human shogi, is a popular spring event when armored or kimono-clad people act as shogi pieces. The history of shogi as we know it, and how it first arrived in Japan, is not entirely clear. From the Song dynasty through the Ming dynasty in China, there are stories that numerous trade convoys traveled along the southern islands and all around the Indian Ocean. They traded with Japan and other South Asian countries that could have influenced the development of shogi. The oldest documents that tell us of the existence of shogi are found in the 7-volume writings by Fujiwara Yukinari that lived from 972 to 1027. These documents are known as the Kirin Sho. The writings describe how to write characters that are used in shogi pieces. Another piece of evidence from the time is the Shinsharo Gakuki that was written at some point between 1058 and 1064 by Fujiwara Akira. Also contain passages describing shogi and its nature. However, the earliest archaeological evidence of shogi was excavated in Kofukuji in the Nara prefecture, where 16 wooden shogi pieces were found along with a wooden writing plaque dating back to 1058, indicating that the shogi pieces were of the same period. The pieces found also have a 5-sided shape that were cut from a wooden writing plaque. These symbols were directly etched into the surface. Modern shogi, known as Honshogi, like the Japanese game Go, was approved by the Tokugawa shogunate in a law giving endowments to shogi players and their families. This became known as the Iemoto, which is a system of familiar generations in traditional Japanese arts. This includes also things like kabuki or whale fishing, and giving themselves the title of Shogi Dodokoro, or places of shogi. Early known shogi players were Kano Sansa and Ohashi Sukei. During the reign of the 8th shogun of Japan, Tokugawa Yoshimune, the castle shogi tournament was held each year on the 17th day of Kanasuki. The corresponding day in the modern calendar will be the 17th of November, and it was designed since then as the Shogi Day in Japan. During this time, the Meiji were the Iemotos of shogi, and they were the ones responsible for the endowments. Over the course of the shogunate's reign, the title Meijin became the hereditary title of the Ohashi family and the Ito family. Even today, the winner of the shogi competition is given this title of Meijin. It is a tradition now for anyone who inherits the title of Meijin to present a collection of shogi puzzles to the government. We have mentioned before with archaeological evidence, we also know that it is most likely being introduced from the imperial ambassadors that came from China to Japan during the rule of Nara, from 710 to 794. It became especially popular with the nobility at first, from 1794 to 1185, when the Japanese capital was moved from Nara to Kyoto. The emperor formally named the shogun in this game, who ruled the powerful and often rebellious samurai. Real power throughout the empire came from the shogunate. Another important period in the history of shogi occurs during the interruption of the emperor Muromachi, that ruled from 1333 to 1568 by a family of hereditary shoguns known as the Ashikaga in the capital of Kyoto. During this time, the most popular version was Dai Shogi. That is also known as the large shogi and is played on a 13 by 13 or 15 by 15 playing field, opposed to the smaller Sho-Shogi, middle shogi, and Sho-Shogi, the small shogi. A small shogi peaked in popularity by the end of this period, since it was played on a 9x9 board and it had many less pieces. Because it took the three main pieces from the favored medium shogi, this is the bishop, the rook, and the drunken elephant, known as the Swiss saw. The drunken elephant was removed because it had the ability to promote to an emperor, which the emperor of the time, Go-Nara, did not like. The origin of the re-entry of captured pieces is not known, but it probably occurred during this period. And since then, it is considered that a Sho-Shogi evolved into the modern version of shogi that we all know today. We are going to take a look at the differences that exist between shogi and chess. There are several variants for forms of shogi that are played from a 7x7 board to a gigantic 25x25 board. The most common forms, though, are the 9x9 versions described previously. Most shogi pieces can be promoted under certain circumstances. The effect of promotion is that the piece concerned acquires different or increased powers. This means that pawns, for instance, which at the beginning of the game are not all that useful, can be promoted into more powerful pieces later in the game. Some forms of shogi allow captured pieces to be re-entered or dropped by the capturing player. This includes the modern shogi. In chess, handicapping is regarded as being difficult to set up, whereas in shogi it is really quite easy. There is actually a very large literature describing handicapping in shogi, and there are several levels that can be applied to it. In chess, the pawns capture by moving diagonally. This means that the pawns can protect one another, giving rise to the concept of the pawn chains. In shogi, pawns capture by moving straight ahead, so this concept does not exist, and the strategies underlying the use of pawns and their promotion are totally different. In chess, it is possible also to position the knights within the opponent's territory or protected squares where they are difficult to dislodge. Whereas in shogi this did not happen, and the knights have a way more difficult time of getting to a advantageous position. In shogi there is no composite castling move. Castles are built up slowly move by move. This refers to the moves in chess where you can castle a king and a rook that are at a difference of 2 squares from each other. But in shogi, castling consists in forming pretty much a complete array of defense, and there are many different ways of doing a castle. Some are pretty simple and others are pretty complicated. Now, I will be giving a description of Sho-Shogi and its differences with modern shogi or Hon shogi. What we need to play shogi is first a 9x9 board. This means that it has 9 rows and 9 columns. Each player will have a set of 21 edge-shaped pieces. The pieces are as follows. These are the king, a drunken elephant, 1 rook, 1 bishop, 2 gold generals, 2 silver generals, 2 knights, 2 lances, and 9 pawns. As we can see, unlike in chess, rooks and bishop are more scarce. There is only 1 of each for every player in the game. And the drunken elephant piece is not played in modern shogi. It is only played in older versions of the game, such as Sho-Shogi. To set up the board, it is pretty simple in this instance, not like with Dai Shogi or Chu Shogi, which, since they have a much larger number of pieces and boards, it takes more time to set up. The pieces will be arranged in 3 lines. The first line will be composed of the 9 pawns side by side. Behind them, we will be playing our special pieces. There will be, on the second square, there will be a bishop, In the center there will be a drunken elephant, and on the right there will be a rook. However, as said before, this is for Sho-Shogi. In modern shogi, the drunken elephant piece does not exist. The back line is composed as follows. Starting from the left, we will have a lance, then we will have a knight, then a silver general, then the gold general, and then the king. And for the right side, it will be the same arrangement. This means that the piece arrangement will be done like that for all official games. Rules of Sho-Shogi are very similar to the ones of modern shogi. The main difference is that the promotion of the drunken elephant can be to a crown prince. This means that when there is going to be a checkmate, as we know, like in chess, we win the game by capturing the enemy king. However, in Sho-Shogi, if the drunken elephant is promoted to a crown prince, you will need to capture both the king and the crown prince. Another important rule, as we mentioned before, is that this version of the game allows for the pieces to be captured, not killed. This means that if I capture, for instance, a pawn, I can put it on the side and deploy it if it follows a series of specific rules. So, with pawns, there are specific rules for dropping a piece. Normally we can drop a piece on a square that is not occupied already by a piece. We cannot also drop a piece promoted onto a square. In order to promote a piece, we need to get one of our pieces into the enemy's top 3 lines. These are shown at the beginning. As we can see, we have our 3 lines of pieces, so in order to promote, we need to get one of our pieces to move into one of the 3 lines of the enemy. However, we cannot drop pieces with the following rules. Concerning pawns, they cannot be dropped at the end of the line. This is because they cannot move from there. So we cannot drop any piece in a square where its movements are totally constrained by a lack of space. We need to be able to move the piece at least in one direction. When we promote the piece, we flip it, and it will go from having black characters to red characters. However, it is not mandatory to promote a piece, and we can choose to do so. Now, with jumping pieces. A jumping piece is a piece that has the ability to jump over other pieces. In Sho-Shogi and Hon-Shogi, this is only the knight. The knight will move 2 squares ahead and 1 to the left or to the right, and it can jump over pieces to do so. Then we have pieces that are called ranging pieces, like the bishop and the rook. They are called ranging pieces because, unlike the other pieces, they can move in any direction that they are allowed to. The rook can move in any amount of squares forward, backwards, left and right, and the bishop diagonally any amount of squares that it pleases. Another important difference with chess is that there is no queen in shogi, so it is important to know how to make other pieces to be able to work together. The pieces that cannot be promoted are the king and the gold general. All of the other pieces can be promoted into golden generals, apart from the rook and the bishop, which will get the movements of the king in any direction that they do not have. So for a rook, for instance, it will gain the ability to move 1 square diagonally, and for the bishop to move 1 square forwards, backwards and sideways. All of the other pieces will be promoted to golden generals, apart from the gold generals themselves and the king. If you are playing Sho-Shogi and you have a drunken elephant, it will move and be promoted to a crown prince. The crown prince has the movements of the king. There are a couple more rules that are important to bear in mind in shogi. A player is not allowed to give perpetual check. This is basically using the same set of movements to put the enemy king in check. There is a specific limit on the number of this, depending if you are playing professionally or amateur. But you should avoid trying to give perpetual checks because it is illegal, and some people specifically do not like them to be checked all of the time. You should also bear in mind that if you are playing with a drunken elephant and it is promoted, that you will be able to have two different centers of power with your crown prince and king, and that you will not need to protect so much the king. The objective is to give check to both of them. However, there are other ways in which you can win apart from the ones mentioned with checking. You can also win by points, there is a specific system for it. You can also play handicap games, and then any player that makes an illegal move will lose immediately, such as dropping a pawn in the furthermost line where it cannot move. The last one is the most uncommon way to end a game. It is called repetition or senishite. If the same position occurs 4 times with the same player to play, then the game is cancelled and the opposing player will win. As we have explored here, Shogi is a complicated game. It is considered harder than chess because of the larger number of pieces and the ability to capture and drop them. It has few rules, but the few rules that it has give great flexibility to the game. So those are the histories and movements that you can make in Shogi, and the history of Shogi itself and how it has reached our days. I hope that you guys have liked it, and I will be posting more videos about Shogi in the future.